Our journey to Singapore begins just off the Western Expressway, a road that has been plagued infinitely with traffic for as long as I've been alive. The good news is, in recent years, there's been a new overpass that takes you straight from the Western Expressway directly to Terminal 2. But on that note, let me tell you a little bit about where we're flying today. Covering roughly 2,400 miles, we take off facing west before immediately turning southeast, flying just north of Chennai into the Bay of Bengal, touching the northern coast of Sumatra, and flying through the Strait of Malacca before arriving into Singapore. For those that are unfamiliar, before you can even enter the airport terminal, you have to have a paramilitary member check your boarding pass as well as your passport to make sure that you have a flight on that day. At outstation airports, usually the entire airline's check-in counters are in the same area, but in the case of Singapore Airlines, there's a special section where the business class check-in counters are at the far end of the terminal. For this morning flight, there is only a business class lane since that's the highest cabin of service, but for the evening flight where there is a first class cabin, you'd also find a separate lane for first class passengers. The premium check-in area also has these cocoon-covered couch relaxation areas, though quite frankly I've never made use of them because I would simply fall asleep there and miss my flight, as I have before. If there's anything that I've learned over the years from traveling from this airport, the security situation here is pure comedy. Premium cabin passengers at Mumbai get their own dedicated security channel. Usually it's on the east side of the building, but this time it got moved to the west side. In all honesty, this has probably changed 4 or 5 or 6 or even 7 times ever since they've opened up this new terminal. The one good thing I'll say is that no matter which side of the airport your security line lets you out at, there will always be dedicated immigration lanes to get your passport stamped. Otherwise, the normal security lanes and then immigration lanes are usually quite long. After crossing immigration, it was the all too familiar Indian airport experience. No eating, sleeping, drinking, or even breathing until you've walked through all of duty free. Before going anywhere else, I really had to take a look outside. I'm usually at this airport only in the night, so the traffic that's there during the daytime is generally an unfamiliar sight to me. And speaking of sights, the next site we'll be checking out is the beautiful Adani Lounge here at Mumbai Airport. Now, for those of you not familiar with the lounge setup here in Mumbai, there's no Alliance or Airline lounge, it's one common contract lounge. The Adani Lounge is split into an East Wing, a West Wing, and then a first class section within the West Wing lounge. Whether your access is to the East Wing or the West Wing has always been unclear to me. I know that it's depending on which lounge the airline contracts with, but with Singapore Airlines for example, the last time I was here I got to use the West Wing lounge, but this time we're in the East Wing. The good news is both lounges are quite nice with a good variety of Indian and Western hot and cold food options. While I was in the lounge, on this absolutely stunning and crystal clear day here in Mumbai, I was able to see my beautiful A350 landing through the smog. This lounge has a variety of different kinds of seating, from couches to tabletop to high-rise seating. Now, the lounge may look relatively empty right now, but I promise it's much busier in the evening. Given the meal that was awaiting us on the plane, I really wasn't feeling too hungry at the lounge. But that reminds me, I almost forgot to show you the hot food items. Depending on whether you're trying to eat vegetarian or non-vegetarian, there's a lot of different options for you. Eventually, after feasting away at nothing, we made our way all the way to the corner of Terminal 2 at Gate 74 where our A350 was waiting for us. If there's anything India and the US have in common, it's lining up for boarding before the crew themselves are even on board.
Morning.
Morning.
On behalf of Singapore Airlines, we wish you a pleasant flight.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I've always considered these guys to be the world's best airline, and if any other airline even comes close, where Singapore truly takes the cake is its consistently charming and charismatic cabin crew.
Hello. How are you doing? You're going to the gym, huh? Very strong shoulder, you have that. Thank you. You're going to go across past the beautiful ladies there.
Good morning,
Thank you, Laura.
sir.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Singapore Airlines' regional business class. hosting a staggered configuration that sits across 2 cabins with 7 rows in the first cabin and only 3 rows in the second cabin. This is a very comfortable regional layout. Whereas other airlines have recliner seats, Singapore Airlines has full-on flatbed seats. If you are traveling by yourself, I highly recommend the window seats in rows 12, 15, 17 in the forward cabin and row 20 in the rear cabin. These window seats are more private and separated from the aisle. As a matter of fact, seat 17K is where I'm sitting at, and we'll have a much closer look in just a second. On the other hand, if you'd like to cozy up with somebody you're traveling with, rows 11, 14, 16, and 18 have a great pair middle seat, as well as rows 19 and 21 in the rear cabin. Besides the seat being slightly on the harder side, there's really no other complaints I could have for the seat, for a flight especially of this length. As we got seated, another crew came around offering us water, apple juice, or orange juice. And given that none of the pre-departure beverages were alcoholic, I say we take advantage and look at all the seat features while I'm still sober. Directly underneath your TV is a foot cubby. While you're relaxing or sleeping, this is where your feet go. If you have any jackets or coats, hang them here and the crew will take them away and keep them until landing. Immediately to the left of the seat is a sort of vanity mirror that you can pull out and stare at yourself all flight and tell yourself how good you look. Right next to that is a section where the amenity kit is kept, as well as a pair of noise-canceling headphones and the menu for the flight, as well as power plugs. The tray table can be pulled out by clicking this lever underneath the tray table and pulling it straight out. It's one of those tray tables that folds open, and you can maneuver it around a little bit but not too much, and once you're done you fold it and push it back in, and once you push it through it'll lock in place. Every seat also came with a standard pillow and blanket, which, even though this was a daytime flight, it's always good to have. The last important thing on this seat is the seat controls. Over here you'll find everything from how much you want to recline your seat to even whether you want to be interrupted for any meals or not.
This is an Airbus A350 service bound for Singapore. The flight time is approximately 4 hours and 50 minutes.
Within 30 minutes of boarding, we had already closed doors and begun our pushback, which was remarkably fast for an A350. And even so, the great views we got a view of some old Jet Airways 777-300ERs that were kind of just hidden away and parked here.
We remind you that this is a non-smoking flight. Smoking, including the charging and use of e-cigarettes, is prohibited throughout the aircraft, including the lavatories. Thank you for your attention. Refer to the safety card located in the seat pocket in front of you for more information. On behalf of Singapore Airlines, we hope you have a great time on board as well as in Singapore or anywhere else in the world with you.
Now coming up to one of my more favorite parts of the flight. What exactly are we going to eat today? The cool thing about flights leaving India is that there's a special Indian menu designed by Chef Sanjeev Kapoor, who's one of the chefs who's been on Singapore Airlines' culinary panel for as long as I can remember. Singapore Airlines' drink menu is also quite good, having champagne, white wine, red wine, and even some cocktails and spirits available. And don't worry, I know I didn't mention any non-alcoholic drinks, but they've got plenty of those as well. Included in this section of non-alcoholic beverages is also plenty of caffeinated beverages as well as tea selections as well. Singapore Airlines' beverage menu really has it all. In addition to Singapore Airlines naturally being one of the world's best airlines, it also holds a particularly nostalgic value for me every time I step on board. The crew took our post-departure drink orders while we were on the ground, and I got an Spritzer, a humble mix of apple juice, vodka, and 7-Up. Why do I mention this? Because growing up, my choice of drink on Singapore Airlines was the Fruit Spritzer, or as it was later called, the Apple Bliss, a humble mix of 7-Up and apple juice. It's a very humble mixture and one that can easily be replicated on the ground, but I simply don't because anytime I fly Singapore Airlines, just that taste reminds me of the good times on board. Shortly after drinks, the crew started bringing around the chicken sautés, and I will note that pre-departure, this used to be a sauté cart that was rolled around, but then they changed it to just a hand-plated service.
Alright, can I take that stand, please?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The sauté was of course quite tasty. Some of my pieces were moist, whereas others were a little dry, but that's nothing more than where exactly the sauté was in the container while it was being heated. The peanut sauce that it comes with also has a nice sweet taste that it adds to the sauté. The crew also gave an antibacterial wipe that you could use to wash your hands.
Mr. Desmond, may I offer you, would you like to try the lamb curry with rice today? Is our special selection.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll go for
Okay,
that.
great. Thank you very much. That's a great choice.
Thank you. After having our sauté plates cleared, another crew member did come around and set our tables with tablecloths for the main part of our lunch service. The service was definitely on the slower side, but by my Indian standards, it was very much on time and on schedule. While we are waiting for our main course, let's go check out where I like to spend my free time, the lavatory. The crew generally does a pretty good job keeping the lavatory consistently clean. There's also hand towels as well as creams and face sprays at your disposal. There is a drawer in which you'll find amenities that don't come with your amenity kit but are available anytime you'd like to use a lavatory, such as toothbrush and toothpaste as well as face wipes. By the way, just so we're clear, I was mostly kidding about the lavatory being my favorite place to spend time. Okay, anyways, back to the lunch service we go, where the crew were currently bringing around a trolley with drinks as well as our appetizer, which is a part of the main course that we were gonna get. Thank you.
Would you like a glass of wine to go with the meal?
Sure.
Would you like a glass of bread or wine?
Can I go with white?
I've got a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chardonnay.
Chardonnay, please.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy.
The menu advertised this as cottage cheese, but we Indians know this more commonly as paneer. The paneer itself was served on a bed of vegetables and chutney, and chutney is typically supposed to be at least somewhat spicy. This one wasn't very fragrant or spicy, but it still was a little bit savory at least. The crew also came around with a basket of papad, naan, garlic bread, and plain bread, just basically different kinds of breads, and I went with garlic bread. The crew were pretty proactive about clearing trays once we were done with them, and another crew member immediately brought out my main course once I was done with my current one. The main course was a lamb dish which was marinated in spinach along with many different kinds of spices along with lentils, corn, and rice. Not really a big corn guy, but even this was nicely spiced and flavorful. As for the rice, I made sure to scoop some of that up and mix it with the lentils, and that was also a very, very good combination. The lentils were incredibly fragrant and also very well spiced, a complete contrast to what the appetizers were. The lamb too, just like all the other dishes, was well spiced and really tasty. Couldn't say enough good things about it. Immediately after clearing my tray, the crew also offered me a raspberry mousse cake. It was good. It wasn't anything mind-blowing, but it was still pretty good for what it was. At this point, I was quite stuffed, but sometimes I just like to act like a hound, so when the crew asked me if I wanted a cheese plate, I really could not say no to the opportunity. Food overall was quite good and plentiful across the board, but the meal service took nearly 3 hours to complete, which definitely can't happen on a flight that's only 5 hours. Looking at the amenity kit, it was very much bare bones, not too many things inside of it, just a few cosmetic items. Any other major thing you'd need could be found inside of that drawer from inside the lavatory, which had the napkins as well as the toothbrush. The good news is, this was a daytime flight, so you shouldn't really need all that many things. There was also internet available, and the awesome part was that it's completely free for business class passengers. All you have to enter is your name, an email, and a seat number, and it will automatically connect you, and the speeds were pretty reasonable too. If you have an iPhone or an Apple device, just make sure not to accidentally leave the screen because it takes a while to get back in. As we get to the end of this flight, I can't help but just appreciate how consistent Singapore Airlines has always been, across all of its flights. The truth is, there's simply a lot of great airlines out there, and a lot of these airlines even have a business class seat that's better than what Singapore Airlines have, or sometimes even food. But one thing where Singapore Airlines truly shines is its emphasis on service, and you can definitely see this as a product on all of its flights. Having all of these elements together is something that you just don't find on too many flights anymore. We can even take this very route, Mumbai to Singapore, as a comparison. The only two other major carriers that operate this route are Air India and Vistara, and as much as I love those two airlines, they just don't compare to Singapore Airlines, simply put. With all that said, if you do have the opportunity and the choice, I will always recommend Singapore Airlines. I think it's always a consistent experience and one to enjoy. At this point, everybody here, including myself, is probably tired of my voice, so please do enjoy the rest of the views as we make our way down into Singapore.